A little preface. My sister-in-law has an almost 1-year-old baby, who we will call cute nephew. She and the baby daddy broke up a couple of months ago, but sister-in-law was always and demanding throughout the entire relationship. Even got to the point where she broke or burned all of his stuff while she was pregnant, including his new Xbox One, which he saved 4 months to buy. She didn't let anyone know she was pregnant until she started to show, 6.5 months, and had remained unemployed and dependent on mother-in-law and her baby daddy, but wasn't preparing even the slightest to make sure the kid was brought into the world well. So she's the main crazy one here, but the situation itself involves mother-in-law being enabling and demanding. Me and future dear husband, who I just straight up call my dear husband. I'm almost 20 now and we've been together since I was just barely 13 and he was 16, and we've lived together for a year. Got a call around 6:30 p.m. when he had just gotten home from work, and I was already stressed to high hell about some clients. I'm an insurance agent, and some essays I needed to finish for my witchcraft classes at my local metaphysical shop. It's mother-in-law, and she says that sister-in-law got arrested for and domestic violence. Sister-in-law went to drop off cute nephew at baby daddy's house and got into an argument, and subsequently kicked his butt. He didn't fight back. 1, because he's smart, and 2, he was holding their baby. Mother-in-law proceeded to tell us to call a lawyer to work on her case. Number 1, its pastime law office is closed. And number 2, she hasn't even been booked yet. She's in a holding cell. We don't even know what her official charges are. There's nothing we can even do at the moment for her but wait to hear how much the bond is and what her charges will be. But nope, she tells us, call a lawyer to work on her case right now. Click. What the duck, mother-in-law? We know that no pro bono lawyer will take her case because it's set in stone, and she can't afford a lawyer out of pocket. So we do as much research as possible into what her charges could be given the situation, the punishments, and the costs associated. Mother-in-law calls back. What's the situation? We tell her we've done some research and that it isn't looking so good. She's probably going to be charged with a first-degree misdemeanor, and if she's lucky, only get out with parole. Well, call back when the lawyer says something better. Click. Dude, seriously, what the duck, mother-in-law? We try calling her back, but she keeps rejecting our calls. Eventually, 2 hours later, we get a call back. Her bail is $4,000. How soon can you get the money to me? Record scratch. What? What makes you think we're bailing her out? Something, family. Something, you never help us. Family. Guilt-tripping about dear husband's deceased father would do it for them. Family. You have more money than us. Dude, until Friday, we only have $3 to both our names combined. She's going to have to talk to a bail bondsman and pay 10% down with 35% interest, or wait the 3 days in jail required until she's released. The county law states, unless it's a felony, she'll be held for 3 days minimum, or until her court date is scheduled, whichever is later. Fine. Tell the lawyer she'll be getting out tomorrow at 7 on bond. Mother-in-law, we haven't talked to a lawyer. We've been trying to tell you that. We've also been trying to tell you to let her stay in jail. She needs to learn the consequences of her actions. If she has someone to bail her out, she's going to keep using you. You can't just click, duck. She calls us back another 2 hours later to update us on the state of cute nephew. We already knew he was staying with baby daddy until sister-in-law gets out of jail. She then proceeds to tell us that we're ungrateful and that if ICE catches her, she'll be deported, and it's our fault. She's now in debt because of the bond that she didn't have to pay, and that we should feel sorry. Click. No, mother-in-law, it's sister-in-law's fault. She knew the risks. Both mother-in-law and baby daddy are illegal immigrants. Sister-in-law and dear husband were born here, and being arrested could get them caught, deported, and cute nephew put into foster care by the state while sister-in-law is in jail, and then taken away when they find out she only makes $100 a week. We can't afford to take him in. Sister-in-law demands help from others when she doesn't put in the effort to take care of her own child herself. And now, mother-in-law and baby daddy and his family, parents and 6 siblings, all undocumented, might get deported. And you're saying it's our fault? No. Duck no. If mother-in-law wants to keep bailing her out, that's on her. She has no business around a child and hopefully will lose custody. If mother-in-law is risking deportation to allow sister-in-law to act a fool, those are the consequences she's risking. None of those things are you or future dear husband's responsibility or problem. Quite frankly, unless you guys want to be considered for custody if baby daddy gets deported, I distance myself from this situation in a big way. Nothing about this looks like anyone in the family is keeping cute nephew, and you don't need mixed up in it. Stop doing research for them and don't contact a lawyer. You don't have the means to pay for one, and again, not your responsibility. My husband, 35, does not have a car. He sold his old one to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's not a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that did not affect me until my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hang out places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad his driving is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asked if he could drive my car to the wedding, but I refused. But not because I'm not invited. Another story for another day. But because, like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit, calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him, but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke up at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and couldn't find my car either. I was beyond pissed. I called him, and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for whole 5 days, and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do it because you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, swearing over and over that I gave him permission to take it, and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend a wedding that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to be there with his family and decided to extend his stay, and he still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now, his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful. Not the a-hole, but I get the feeling that there is a lot more going on here. Your husband sold his car to help pay for his brother's wedding, even though he needed it to commute? Is your husband prone to making bad decisions? And he paid for your brother's wedding even though you, his wife, were not invited to it? I'm sorry, but what kind of marriage is this? In my opinion, you should start stashing cash away and documenting anything that you own that is not subject to community property, if you live in a place with community property laws. I don't see this marriage lasting much longer, and your husband has already demonstrated that he will lie to the authorities to get himself out of trouble. It didn't work this time, but you should protect yourself. Ex cheated on me with his current wife. That was 5 years ago. Ex and I share 3 sons, who are 11, 10, and 8. Ex's wife has a daughter and a son with her ex, who she also cheated on with my ex. The two of them have said it all, from "it was meant to be" to "how great it is because the kids all have a bigger and happier family," blah blah blah. I am over it in some ways. There is very much a sting that the affair partner in my marriage gets to call herself my kid's stepmom. But I'm not at all sorry that my ex is gone. The man slept with her behind my back for 18 months before her husband and I found out. I am civil when the kids are around. I ignore them when the kids aren't around. This whole thing happened over ex's parents. They were disgusted with him for cheating. Mother-in-law told him that he destroyed his kid's foundation, that leaving a spouse is never easy and divorce is hard for kids anyway. But when you add conflict in the way of cheating, you take something from a child that they rarely ever get back. And that's parents who still care about each other and want the best for each other despite not being together. They stayed very close with me and haven't welcomed ex's wife at all. Nor have they been involved in ex's life since, really, or as stepkids. It bothers her a lot. My youngest son won an award in school a couple of weeks ago. X and his wife were there, so was I. X's wife ended up coming up to complain to me because both mine and X's parents showed up briefly, spoke to my son, then to me, and left. She was saying how unfair it is, how her kids don't understand why X's family have nothing to do with them and why they never see them, but they know my kids have a relationship. She said X's family love me. It hurts her feelings to feel not good enough. I'll be honest, I rolled my eyes first, but then I laughed because she seemed to expect sympathy or help from me. Laughing at her pissed her off. I've heard from her and my ex since that I was rude. I should care about the kids at least, and I am not thinking of my kids when I keep bad blood between us and laughing at her suffering. One part of me doesn't care and believes I'm fine once my kids couldn't see it. Another part of me wonders if I was an a-hole to laugh at her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. So, like, she ruins your marriage. I know he did as well. But wants you to now help her out? The nerve. And she's lucky you just laughed. Proud of you for not saying what you really wanted to say after all this time. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your in-laws sound like great people. They know who the mother of their grandchildren is and have never given up on you. The ex's new wife is just upset that there are consequences for their actions and wants everyone to forget that she and your ex both tore apart their respective families and tried to patchwork their own big family. If you're civil in front of the kids like you say, then I am fully on board with your reaction. She and her kids already have 2 sets of grandparents outside of your in-laws. She just doesn't want the guilt of doing any wrong. A few years ago, it was revealed that my dad, 43, was cheating on my mom, 42, for the 3rd time. His philosophy is, it's not cheating because we didn't have sex, and she filed for divorce. The divorce was quite hostile due to his mistress pulling strings in the background, and he treated my mom and I like crap over the span of nearly 2 years. With my mom, he acted like your standard butthurt spouse who's pissed they're getting divorced due to their actions. I watched him throw fits at my mom for not getting his way, watched him try to literally take the router out of the house when online classes were still new and being worked out, and would get pissed I didn't take his side, etc. This boiled over when he sent me a text message practically disowning me, but then coming back 2 weeks later acting like we're buddies. My relationship with him was already on thin ice at that point due to his behavior, so at that point, I just said screw this, I'm done, and decided when my mom was finally out of there, I was cutting contact. He ended up marrying his mistress, who no one has really met, a month ago. Here's where things get tricky. My great-grandmother, his grandma, passed away due to cancer. Her daughter who took care of her had told the family that she wanted a celebration of life party, as opposed to a funeral. She was the life of the party and everyone loved her. She definitely wasn't the type to want the final party in her honor to be one sitting in a funeral home. My mom and I were invited and asked to join, and we were fully planning to, until my dad decided he wanted to bring his mistress to the party. I was pissed. I find it extremely inappropriate that he wants to bring his new spouse to the event to introduce her to everyone, and her being the one who tore our family apart no less. Note, my great-grandmother said very explicitly she wanted her nowhere near her family, and that him bringing his mistress to introduce would completely detour what the party is actually meant for. I said to him it's extremely disrespectful to bring the mistress to an event, knowing his grandmother's feelings on her. He said he wanted someone who would support him there, and that we don't get a say on who he brings, and is upset I'm not supporting it. Now my mom and I are on the fence of if we should go. We want to be there for my aunt and her family, and we would tolerate it if only he was coming. But I refuse to be anywhere near her, acting like she's my new stepmom, and I know my mom won't have anything nice to say if they're dumb enough to try and approach her, which they are. Would we be the a-hole if we don't go to the memorial party? My dad, a few other family members and friends think we would be because the event is for my great-grandmother, and it's just a few hours of our life, so we can ignore them. Not the a-hole, but talk it out with your aunt first. This is supposed to be a celebration of your great-grandmother's life, and your dad is expressly going against her wishes by bringing his new wife to the party. Not the a-hole. If you go and they are there, one of you will most likely cause a scene, and that's not good for anyone. Politely explain this to your aunt. Tell her that you don't want your grandma's celebration to be spoiled with drama, and celebrate her life in your own way. Not the a-hole. However, I would let the daughter know and uninvite your dad and not let his mistress in. If they aren't going to follow the rules and try to center the party on their new marriage, that is not a celebration of your great-grandma's life. That's a spit on her grave, especially since she didn't like the mistress. I, 43 female, lost my husband back in 2020. He was married once before and had 2 kids, Jack, 20 male, and Jill, 20 female, with his ex-wife May, 47 female. They divorced because Jane had cheated, but for the sake of the children, my husband agreed to keep it a secret. By the time my husband and I met, he had already been divorced for 3 years, and when we got engaged, he told me the details of the divorce. During the wedding, Jack and Jill seemed to be disinterested and distant, but I still wanted them to feel included, and agreed to them wanting to do a slideshow during the reception. Big mistake. After everyone else gave their speeches, Jack and Jill made a speech accusing my husband of cheating on their mom, that I was a mistress, and that they no longer would have a relationship with their father so long as he was married to me. I was embarrassed and distraught. May had lied to Jack and Jill and created this whole elaborate story since we were engaged. She would pretend to play dumb and would prevent my husband's attempts to get them into therapy. We thought that if we gave them enough time, things would get better, but it never did. Even after I gave birth to my children, my husband never stopped trying though. Jack and Jill were truly awful to me and my kids. My daughter Lisa, 7 female, had a stuffed elephant that she loved as a toddler. Jill literally snatched it out of her hands and ripped out its button eyes before tossing it out the window because Lisa was playing too loudly. I have a huge dog allergy, and Jack would insist on bringing his dog to family events, aka grandparents' house, or bring something that the dog rolled around in and place it in my car or on the bed that I would sleep in. These are just some of the awful things that they did. But what was truly the most hurtful thing is when my husband got sick, they refused to see him. I tried multiple times and even begged them to come see their father, but they laughed, yelled, or called the authorities on me. I just gave up after that, and when my husband passed away, they didn't even show up to the funeral. But they did show up for the reading of his will the following day with May. Before Jack and Jill could even be told the amount that they would get, they were required to, in front of everyone, review all evidence of May's infidelity from the divorce. They left after that and, from what I was told, exploded on their mother. Since then, Jack and Jill have put in the effort to reestablish relationships with their paternal side and have sent me messages. I read them at first but never responded. Recently, my mother-in-law confronted me about ignoring Jack and Jill's attempts to reach out to me, and I plainly told her that I'm happy Jack and Jill know the truth, but the damage is done. They're clearly looking for forgiveness that I'm not interested in giving. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You don't have to have a relationship with them if you don't want to. But did you hear them out at least? It sounded like they were being mean to you and your family because of lies they were told. Maybe they feel bad now that they know the actual truth.